So I've got this log on the lathe. First I'm going to show you what it looks like. You can see that it wobbles quite a bit. This is about as rough as it gets. It's almost it's just a half a log really. I've rounded a little bit so you can kind of see I follow the line a little bit here on an 8-inch round just to get it close. So it's not making the whole lathe walk across the floor. I found a center, put it there. Found another center, put it there. Got a nice, lovely gift from my wifey. It gives me this rotating tailstock. It came out of that log. So that's the full log in diameter. You can see about how big it is. Got some size 12s on there. And so, you know, it's not huge, but it's a good sized bowl. And I have to get rid of all of the high spots that you see in here. You can kind of see where it flickers. Those are high spots that I'll have to remove. And then I'll eventually start working to the bowl shape that's natural to the bowl. I've got this curve here that is the outside of the log. And I'm going to duplicate that as I can along the side axis. So I'm looking at the side of the log. This is looking down the end of the log. This is looking at the side of the log. Got a nice healthy crack in there. It may come out. It may stay in there. I can fill that with super glue. And cyanoacrylate glue works really well for wood turning. It finishes nicely. So that's not going to be a problem as long as it doesn't separate and become shrapnel. But even then, the pieces tend to fly towards the back side of the lathe, not so much towards the front side of the lathe. And I'm fortunate in that. And I've also got Mr. Healthy face protector. So I'm going to get started. You can see now what I'm shooting for here. I've got a big chunk of it kind of carved away up here. Oh, this is my 5/8 inch bowl gouge. A lovely Christmas gift from last year from Mary. This is Dad's old Powermatic number 45 that he bought from the school district and refurbished. So thanks, Pop. And you can kind of see I'm starting to get kind of the shape of the round going here. Again, there's a big old crack in the middle. There's a lovely knot for character. And if I turn this on, you can see the shape that I go for. So I look along the top side, and I can see the shadow of what needs to be removed as I bring the tool across. So, and this is how you do it. So a little chip here, a little chip there. Before you know it, you got a bunch of dust on the floor and a bowl on your lathe. Okay, I'm really close to round. So there's a little negative space right there. There's a little void. You can kind of see it if there's a little flat spot. You can see where I've been cutting away. This is almost a cylinder now. And once I get into the rough cylinder shape, maybe clean up some of the high points here and there, get it nicely balanced. Then I'm going to turn up the speed. And the speed gives me a couple things. It gives me protection against these tear outs. As you see here, that's the kind of the change of the grain. As this thing rotates around, it comes, so this is end grain. As it comes around, the tip of the gouge starts cutting into that end grain and can pull out a little bit. And it's nice and smooth. It's nice and smooth. And as you get on the other side, you'll start seeing it pull out again. So in order to combat that, I'll keep the tool super sharp. And I'll go back over to the grinder in a minute and sharpen that up. But first, I want to get the rough work out of the way. And once most of the rough work's out of the way, I can speed it up and start defining the outer shape. There's a little... Okay, so I've got a nice general shape. I've got a little bit of a a tenon sticking out. That right there is the natural edge of the wood. The bark had fallen off, so this stuff was essentially a rotten tree. But rotten is good when it comes to wood turning because you can see all the kind of the weird coloration. There's some bug holes in there. There have been bugs feasting on this tree. And that's real tear out that you're seeing there. And that's because this is remarkably dry, right? So this has been sitting on the ground in my backyard for I don't know how many years before we got there. We've been here for 3 years. So this stuff is really dry. And the shavings that come off, you can see that it's almost like powder. When it's turned green, green is really fun to turn because it comes off in ribbons. When the tools are sharp and the wood is green, you get these long ribbons of wood to come off. This is fun too. You get some interesting possibilities. Well, the nice thing about when it's dry, it's not going to change anymore. When it's green, you have to turn it part way, then you stop and you let it stabilize so it doesn't crack. Then you come back after 6 months and you turn it the rest of the way. And short attention span, Tim doesn't like that. So this is how we roll. You can see I've got some voids there in that knot. I'll clean that up eventually. I got some more work to do to find and shape this thing and get rid of those tear outs that you see there. But I was going to tell you how we get this started is that, here, I'll turn on Mr. Light. And what you're seeing right here, this thing, that's called the live center. Live centers have, drive centers. It's called drive center. Drive centers have little teeth on them. They grip into the wood, so as it rotates, it kind of grabs into the wood. You got a little spur to find the center, and you got those other side spurs with the sharp knife edges on them to dig into the wood and allow it to actually provide the torque needed in order to spin this thing. On this side is my dear wife Mary's lovely gift that she gave for my birthday, and you can see that rotates. So this thing is on a bearing. And that hard tip, that point, drives into the wood. So if I turn the wheel on the end of this quill, it drives that into the wood, and it gives me a pretty tight fit. I can actually turn it from this side. So what's going to happen now? So I'm going to do some finishing with a sharpened tool, try to get this to the right shape. I'm going to start finishing off the end of this piece. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a kind of a raised plug that comes off of the bottom of that. So I can grip it with this. This thing is a jaw chuck, and there's a little screw hole in there. There's a key that goes in. It's just like a drill chuck, and these jaws come close on whatever you tighten it up on. And so that gives me something to drive. So eventually that thing will get screwed onto the threads that you see here after the live center comes out. I'll flip it around, clamp it into the jaw chuck, and then I'll have this side exposed. And this is when I start leveling out the surface, getting rid of this stuff. That right there, that's the center of the tree. It's called the pith. And there's a lot of shifting that goes on over time. So I'm going to take the top of this back a ways, so it doesn't change too much. Maybe I might experiment a little bit of this just to try to catch the top of this knot and keep it whole. Get rid of that knot. And yeah, it's going to be a real pretty bowl. I'm going to keep the shape of this thing open as opposed to closed. So a closed form has kind of a cupped cross section like this, so it closes and I'll do another video sometime. But this is essentially going to be a nice open bowl. A bowl not for soup, but maybe for fruit. Liquids won't work well in these old wood bowls that I make, but somewhere down the road I'm going to be doing some work with rosewood. That little block of rosewood there is going to be a nice tight bowl. And I got some of Dad's cherry. That's a significant block of cherry that I'm going to turn a couple bowls out of. for remembrance of Dad. Anyway, so thanks again, Cliff. Yeah, so I'm gonna sharpen. I'm gonna get some finishing done. I'm gonna turn a tenon, and then when we come back, you can see how I cut out the inside of the bowl. All right, so that's just staining in the wood. That's not wet or anything. That's just the way the wood works. So this is the upside of letting your wood rot, I guess, outside. I've got quite a few voids. So things like these cracks, there's some bug activity there. You can see that's actually a pretty solid bug run. There's like little worms and beetles that like to bore through the wood. And I've also got a lot of stuff going on in this knot. So I'm going to take some time and get a chisel and maybe some picks, clean out the loose stuff, and then fill that in with super glue. Some cyanoacrylate glue works charms, and if you work for a company that makes that stuff, it's a good thing too. So thanks to the mothership for getting me cyanoacrylate glue. I really love the way this is looking. It looks almost alien. All right, so I haven't sanded this yet, so this is all just clean tool work. If this was a nice piece of green and it was still a little on the green side with a sharp tool, just a touch of maybe 150 or 200 grit sandpaper is all you need. Something I might have to take like some 60 grit to it later on just to get some of the tool marks out, but this is a great start. Anyway, I'm going to go find some thick glue to put in there.